Hello, how you doing and welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're talking about these men, Manie, Libbok and Handre Pollard, and which one should be the Springbok fly half. All of a sudden, I think this is quite an interesting discussion to have, particularly with the resurgence in form of Handre Pollard. So that's what I'm getting into in this video. If you have an opinion on this, particularly Springbok fans, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment down below. Who would you like to see be the starting Springbok fly half, I guess in the Rugby Championship when that gets underway later this year? I know loads of things could change between now and then, but at this moment in time, who are you favouring? Also, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Massively appreciate all the support you guys give. But without further ado, let's get into it. So I hinted at this in the intro, and I think it wouldn't have been that long ago that this wasn't even a discussion, really, because Handre Pollard's form for a little while, really, I mean, even probably since the Lions tour, hasn't been particularly good. At Montpellier last year, he wasn't their starting fly half. He then had this big money move to Leicester to replace George Ford. And I'll be honest, I was looking at Pollard and his form and his injury track record, because that hasn't been the best either, and thinking, I don't know if he's going to be a great signing for Leicester, but certainly in the last month or so, he's been absolutely sensational in the Gallagher Premiership for the Tigers. They look like they are probably going to get the third spot and be in the top four, be in the playoffs. And he's been absolutely brilliant. And on the flip side of that, I know Manie Libbok has been a guy who a lot of Springbok fans would be expecting to kind of step into that 10 jersey. He's been part of the Springbok camp for a little while now without, I wouldn't necessarily say without being the week in, week out, nailed on starter. And it was kind of this discussion of, was that going to be the case now going forward for Libbok? And I think he's been really, really good for the Stormers, actually. I think you can go on YouTube and you can see some brilliant highlights from him and what he brings to the game. But I think it is more of a discussion now between the two of them and who should be the fly half for the Springboks. And I think ultimately it probably comes down to style of play, because in a lot of senses they're quite different fly halves. I actually think they have more similarities than probably a lot of people think. But if we want to look at it kind of at face value, Manie Libbok is a fly half who almost has that X factor, really, particularly with ball in hand. I remember the try he scored against the Dragons in the URC off first phase from around halfway, where he received it from a scrum, stepped inside his opposite number, the fly half, stepped inside the 9 that was covering and ran through to set up the try, to score the try even. I think he has that kind of X factor about him, and that's actually what makes the Stormers against Harlequins such an intriguing matchup this weekend in the Champions Cup. If you consider it's Libbok, it's Marcus Smith, it's two pretty young fly halves who have a similar style. I think Libbok is that guy who brings an element of a real running fly half to the game, whereas of course with Pollard, he's a player who probably in a more traditional sense can pull the strings at fly half. He does still get on the end of tries. He sets up tries. I think he probably can do more with ball in hand than perhaps people give him credit for. But I think on the basis of it, he is a kind of more traditional fly half. His kicking game's very, very good. And we've seen that particularly for South Africa. We saw it in the World Cup in 2019 where he was excellent. He helped spearhead their run to the title. We saw it against the Lions as well, I think, when they won that test series in the kind of COVID Lions series. And so Pollard is a guy, you know what he gives you with the boot. Libbok as well, actually. I looked at his statistics. If we want to look at the kicking side of the game, I think his kicking percentage from tee is kind of 79, just under 80% in the URC this season. Handre Pollard's is kind of around 84% in the Gallagher Premiership. So Pollard has the slight edge from the tee, but it's not a huge gulf between the two of them. And then actually, even if we want to look at the Stormers' recent performance against Leinster in the match they drew in the URC, with Libbok for that final try for the Stormers, you saw the lovely little kick through he played. I think he still does have a kicking game, but perhaps it's just not quite as good as Handre Pollard. And also, depending on how the Springboks want to play, really, is which one do you go for? Because I look at that Springbok pack and I look at the traditional power game they play with, and I said this actually at the end of last year, I think South Africa are looking to develop their game. Jacques Nienaber has spoken about that, adding more elements to it, not just being about being really physical and backing defence and having a very astute kicking game. They want to play more attacking rugby. So from that point of view, Manie Libbok's the guy, isn't he? In terms of the 10, in terms of who you would want to run that system. But I still just wonder, on form, if Handre Pollard could do a real job for the Springboks behind that forward pack. behind two front rows, whether it's your starting front row, whether it's the bomb squad off the bench, he can marshal the game to a point where I think South Africa can be incredibly effective. Can Libbok do that to the same standards? I think he maybe could, but I think there is probably a question mark there as well. So who do you think should be the fly half, the starting fly half, if they're both on form? I appreciate by the time we get to the World Cup, that's a long, long way away. It depends who's on form and whatever else. I would quite like to see them go with Libbok, because I would like to see South Africa continue to develop their playing style, continue to develop their attacking side of the game. I remember him coming off the bench against England at Twickenham in the game South Africa won at the back end of 2022, and he was really explosive. Once the game started to break up, he could exploit gaps. So I'd like to see them stick with him. I think what I would conclude from this, though, if the form of these two fly halves does stay the same, South Africa have a dual threat depending on how they want to approach a game, because they can stick with the more tactical game of inches, take 3 points here, try and squeeze teams, which I've seen them do over the years, or in matches where they think it might really open up, where there might be a bit more space and they can stretch defences. You've also got someone like Libbok as well who can exploit that. So I think it's a really good position for South Africa to be in, but at this moment in time, who do you think should be fly half for the Springboks as we speak, as you watch this video today? At the moment, I'm going to say Libbok, but I think they've got two great options there. Remember to drop your comment down below, like the video as well, and also subscribe to the channel. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.